It's been about 8 months since I had to put my horse Yoshi down. He was a miniature horse, but he was also just the cutest little creature, and I loved him so dearly. So it was very hard for me to do. It was the first animal I've had to put down. There was a lot of things I had to learn as it was happening, so it was very overwhelming. But I thought if I talk about it today, and I talk about, number one, how to recognize when it's time to maybe euthanize your horse, and then also the process of what it's going to be like, and then also just the emotional piece and like how can you deal with this in a healthy way. I feel like especially grief isn't something that's talked a lot about, and I think it should be talked about, and I think it should be also taught how to deal with it. Everyone's going to deal with it at some point. It's just the nature of being alive and being on this earth. I'm also doing this video now because I can actually talk about this now without it becoming emotional. And that's largely because I have gotten past the emotional aspect of it in terms of, yes, I loved Yoshi very dearly, but now all my memories are just good. I don't really remember that day as clearly, and it's not as traumatic as when I think about it, because I tend to think more on the positive side of like his life and how much he blessed me compared to the bad. So starting out, I want to talk about deciding when is the time to euthanize your horse. So it's a very hard thing to do because number one, you want to have hope and you want to think that they could get better. And number two, it can be hard to tell where an animal is at, especially with horses, because they tend to be stoic and it can be hard to navigate because you have an emotional tie to them. And so when is the time to euthanize them? And there's a few points that I would consider if you're in this situation. Number one, is the horse in pain? Pain can drastically decrease the quality of your life, whether it's a human or a horse. And so that is something that needs to be considered. And I'll just talk from my own personal experience here. Yoshi started dealing with pain randomly one day. We tried to cure it for quite a few months and we did everything we could to cure it, but in the end, like, that pain wouldn't go away. And so I could tell it was diminishing the quality of his life. He couldn't do the normal things he liked doing. It was hard to even lead him because the pressure on the lead rope would cause him to be in pain. We never actually knew what was wrong with him. We got him tested, we got him x-rayed. He was an anomaly. No one knew what was wrong with him, not even the vet. But there was something going on with his neck where if you would just apply the slightest pressure, it would cause him severe pain. He would kind of freak out, he would rear up, he would try to escape. It was weird. Once I had tried everything I could to cure the pain and it didn't work, then I was faced with, okay, well, if I let him live, he's gonna just continue with this pain and the quality of his life will be diminished. So that's kind of the thought process behind that. And I think I'm coming at this from more of a standpoint of like a gradual process, rather than if your horse is in a freak accident and gets injured to where they need to be euthanized pretty quickly, it's different in the sense that, like, usually the vet will tell you, okay, the only really option for this is euthanization. So this is like a gradual process. If you notice certain pain in your horse, it's something to consider. A lot of older horses, for example, they won't be sound, like they will walk with a slight limp or stuff, and that just comes with aging, like arthritis and things like that. But you have to look at, is it affecting the quality of their life? Because some horses can get around fine and, you know, they have that slight limp, but they're still lively and having fun. There's also those aspects to consider. If it's drastically changing their life to where, like, you can tell that the horse is different, like they're kind of depressed, a little lethargic, those aspects are what needs to be looked at. So my second point, I've been touching on this already, but is the quality of your horse's life diminishing? This is something to consider with older horses especially, because as horses age, you know, they start losing their teeth, they can't eat like they used to, then they're getting arthritis so they can't move around like they used to. And you really need to watch your horse to see, like, is there a shift to where the quality of their life just isn't what it used to be? Here are the things I consider when it's time to think about this. Can they get around? Like, how hard is it for them to get around? Because if they're like barely able to walk and hobbling really bad and they can't get around that well, then that's a good indicator that the quality of their life has diminished. If they can't eat and they've lost a drastic amount of weight, because horses were designed to continually be eating. And so if they can't do that, that's such a change from their natural behavior that I just think that may be a quality of life thing as well. And then look at their personality. Usually if a horse is in a state where their quality of life has greatly diminished, you can tell through their personality. Like they may just seem down and depressed and slow and not really wanting to engage with you, not really wanting to engage with other horses. That was a big sign with Yoshi. Just normally, he was a very friendly horse and he always wanted to be around you. But towards the end, it was like he didn't care to be around us and he didn't care to be around the other horses. So that was an indicator to me of like, okay, the quality of his life has diminished. My third point is, have you exhausted all your options? And what I mean by that is, have you done everything you can? And for every person, this is going to be different, especially financially, because caring for a horse, especially with health conditions, is going to cost a lot of money. And I know from experience. Do what you can. And if that doesn't work, then you need to consider the alternative. Because for Yoshi, for example, we knew there was something wrong with him. We didn't know what it was. So for like, I'd say almost a year, we spent like getting tests run on him, getting him chiropracted, getting x-rays done, and just trying to figure out what exactly was wrong with him. We tried putting him on painkillers and just all that different stuff, but nothing really seemed to do the trick. And so after that, we were like, okay, nothing's working. He's only getting worse. It's time. Exhausting your options will give you peace of mind because you'll be able to think, okay, well, I did everything that I could. My fourth point to help you make this decision is, can you tell that your horse is ready to go? And this sounds a little weird and people may not necessarily agree with me, but I feel like just like humans, animals have ways of telling you that they are ready to go. And the only way you're really going to pick up on that is, like, number one, a feeling, and number two, just kind of by the look on their face is kind of how I initially take it, and maybe like a change in their personality. I think naturally every animal has like a will to live and to fight and survive, like especially horses because they're flight animals, you know, they want to run away and survive and fight. And so when your horse is not fighting anymore, that's usually a sign that they're ready to go. And when I say fight, I don't mean like, you know, they're kicking at you and rearing up. I mean like they are trying to survive. Like they're in the fight even though they may be injured or have a disease or something. And that's kind of how it went with Yoshi, where one day I just walked outside and I looked at him and I could tell that he was done. And it was crazy because that day when the vet came to do the euthanization, Yoshi did not like the vet. Anytime they would show up, he would really act up. But that day, for some reason, like he stood perfectly still the entire time and throughout the whole process. He did not give the vet an ounce of trouble. It was strange. I mean, it was really like he knew what was going on. I feel like sometimes you can just get that feeling of like, okay, they're done. And the fifth indication that you can use to help you make the decision about letting your horse go is ask your vet, because vets will be honest with you, and it depends on the situation. Like if it's a dire situation where the horse has been severely injured and the only real option is euthanization, the vet will communicate that. Like if the horse cannot come back from it, you know? But when it comes to like an older horse or a horse that's struggling with an illness, I feel like vets are good about letting you make that decision. However, I do think it's on us then, as the caretakers of our animals, to ask for the vet's opinion and really like dig and see, okay, well, when is the time to do this? Because a vet can't make the decision for you in the end. Like they can't force you to do it. It does have to be your call as the owner, but they will definitely tell you when they think it's time. So you need to make sure you ask your vet. Now I kind of wanted to just talk about the process of what happens and the logistics of euthanizing your horse. And this may seem like such a weird thing to talk about because it is logistical. Like horses are big animals and you can't just, you know, euthanize them and then take them to get cremated and put them in your car. There's like planning that goes on around it, and it's really hard because you're having to plan as you are grieving and you're in this traumatic event of like, okay, I have to do this to my animal. I'm having to figure out all of these situations. I'm just going to tell you what happened with Yoshi. So when I decided it was time to put him down, I called the vet Mind you, I was crying, and vets are so understanding because they deal with this all the time. I called the vet. I told them I think I need to put my horse down. And the vet also knew Yoshi's situation because they had been working with him for a year. So they kind of knew, they weren't surprised. So if you work with like a vet clinic where there's multiple vets, like they asked me which vet I wanted. And so I requested the vet that had walked with us through the process just because, you know, I felt comfortable with her. And then they asked me if I had plans for disposing the body, which is something you have to deal with. I told them no, I didn't because I've never done this before. They gave me the information for like a cremation place that's local that would actually pick up the horse and take it to the crematorium. Or like since Yoshi was a miniature horse, we just took him there ourselves. So I'll get to that when the time comes. But you'll want to have that information, and your vet will usually be able to provide you with that because they work closely with those companies. Ask your vet for a cremation service or some type of service that can help, or they may know someone who's willing to like bring their backhoe and dig a grave or just something like that. Then they asked me if I wanted them to come now and do the euthanization, and I said, well, can we do it later in the day just because I need to plan some things, and I also want time with Yoshi for that day. And so they were good about it. They set the time that they would come out. And the nice thing is I had my husband, and this was a very hard situation for him too. It was the first animal he had to euthanize. He was just a little bit more clear-headed than me, and so he handled a lot of these logistics the day of because he was just a little bit more collected. And so it's nice having that other person around. If you have to do this, I would recommend having someone else around who can just help with the process, and so you don't have to worry about those things. Once I got off the phone with the vet, we called the crematorium, and we had to figure out that whole aspect. They were very helpful and they were very gentle with us. They offered to pick him up, but it was an extra charge, so we decided to bring him in ourselves. We were going to load him on the trailer and just drive him there after the fact. And so we had to arrange some of our friends to come out and help pick him up because a miniature horse is still like 300 pounds. So you probably couldn't do this with a normal sized horse. They would probably have to come pick up the normal sized horse. And so we had to arrange all that. And then I just spent time with Yoshi. I brushed him. I gave him his favorite food. You know, I just let him chill and enjoy his last few hours on Earth. Mind you, I was sobbing and crying the whole time, but really, I knew that was best. Another thing we had to do is, since we were going to have to get Yoshi in the trailer, we had to figure out where to put him down so that we could easily like pull the trailer up and get him in the trailer. So we did it like outside of the pasture, kind of towards our driveway. The vet came. They walked us through the process. They told us what was going to happen. They said they'll give him a sedative first, and then once they have the sedative, they're going to give him like a shot that will inject the serum that does the euthanization. They said it's going to take about 30 seconds and then it will be over. And they said you're going to see his legs kick, but that's not something they're doing out of pain. It's just something that their nerves are just causing to happen because they're being put down. So she walked us through that. She was very gentle, very kind. Our vet was amazing. Oh, and then they asked me if I wanted to stay there or if I wanted to go somewhere else. I decided to stay because I just thought it would be a disservice to Yoshi if I didn't. But Colin helped them with the process in a sense, because what happens is horses, they naturally just stand up, you know? They can't lay down like a dog where you can make them lay down. And so when you put a horse down, the horse is going to fall. Luckily, Yoshi was a miniature horse, so it wasn't as, like, I think a big deal. But Colin was still there to help, like, guide him into his fall so that he didn't just, like, face plant. So they did the shot, and then Colin kind of maneuvered him to where he would fall on his side, and then it was over. And it literally happened in like 30 seconds. So from there, the vet asked if we needed anything, if we needed help getting him on the trailer, and I told her that we had some friends coming to help, and they just basically asked if we needed anything else or anything like that. So after that, you know, we talked a little bit with the vet just because she had helped us so much. And there's still questions, like no one knew what was wrong with Yoshi. Like he really was an anomaly. Like he was on a international vet forum and no vet could figure out what was wrong with him. So we just talked a little bit about that, and we talked about like, okay, do we donate his body to science? But there was like there was a process for that too that took like time, and I didn't want to have to hold on to the body or do anything like that while it got worked out. So we just took him to the crematorium. So that is the logistics behind euthanizing a horse. Not fun to talk about. Like I said, having to figure that all out in the moment added just a lot more stress to the day. So I feel like if people know what they need to do beforehand, it will just make things easier. And that's why I wanted to share that. Now I just want to talk about some emotional things, because I think everyone deals with that when it comes to grief, whether it's you're dealing with the loss of a human or an animal. But there are things that will come in your mind. And the fact of the matter is, like, everyone in this world is going to have to deal with grief at some point. I do think it needs to be taught and it needs to be talked about, because a lot of people in grief feel so alone, and you know, they can have really negative effects to it, but in reality, like, everyone has to deal with it at some point. So after the fact, there are just like certain questions that will come to your mind, that came to my mind, is like, did I do enough? Did I wait too long to euthanize him? Is he in heaven? That's a big one. It's like, people are like, well, do animals go to heaven? I believe they do. One thing that I have like learned from this process is that, number one, you are a steward of your animal. You're your animal's caretaker. I believe that God gave animals to humans. Like, he put Adam in the garden and he told Adam to take care of the animals and take care of the garden. And so we have that same mandate, so to speak, where we are to take care of our animals and we are to manage their affairs, in a sense. And part of managing their affairs is choosing when it's time to euthanize them. If you are struggling with this and having to make that decision, if you can just look at it from that standpoint where it's like, you are the animal's caretaker, they can't make that decision. So you're gonna have to make it for them, in a sense. Making that decision for them in the long run is gonna be what's best for them. If you have gone through this process and you have any tips for people, be sure to leave it down in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, please be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more weekly horse videos.